Hi guys, my name is Isa. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about being misunderstood. Let's get started. I feel really blessed for being able to record this video and share what I've learned because this is definitely something that a past version of myself needed. So being able to just grow so much and become a version of myself that helps past versions of myself, that is such a blessing. I used to be like a ball of anxiety, especially when it came to people. I needed people to like me. I needed people to understand me, to understand my reasoning, understand where I was coming from. I needed people to be okay with me, to never get upset with me or angry. So that being something that I cannot control, whenever it happened, my brain was just like all over the place. I wouldn't be able to go to sleep. I couldn't think about anything other than that. I would constantly talk about it with my friends just because it never felt enough. Anything I tried, which to be honest, I don't think I was trying things to regulate. I think it was mostly spinning what happened over and over and over again. That wasn't very self-soothing. It just made it worse. It gave me more anxiety. Now, there was this one specific time 2 years ago where I was friends with someone and we stopped being friends. I was surprised at how everything played out because this person was claiming that we were still friends, but then they were like doing the opposite. So I told this person that I wanted to talk with her, and every single time that we would like schedule something, it just like wouldn't work out. And I just felt so emotional about it because on one hand, this is a person that I really cared about, like this was my friend. And in the other hand, I just didn't do well with people not liking me. So there was like one day where like I saw this person and they were very rude, like they just ignored me. And I don't know what happened in my brain. I don't even know how to explain it because I would never have the thought process as of who I am right now. But in that moment, I thought, let me write a letter to this person and explain my side, and that will fix everything. Keep in mind, they weren't really giving me a space to talk about how I felt or what I thought, not in person, not in call, not even through text. So I was like, I can do it through a letter. I don't recommend doing that, and I will dive a little bit deeper into why you shouldn't do that. Never send a letter to someone who's not willing to listen to you. I was so emotional, so the letter was very messy. I don't blame this person for not being my friend after that letter because I was basically calling them out, and that in itself just makes a conversation really hard. Nobody wants to be told or be given a list of all the things that they're doing wrong. So, in my attempt to explain how I felt, I was like giving context and why I felt a certain way. And just, I don't know, guys, I went off on that letter. And right now, I'm not surprised by my friend's response because they were like, there's no more friendship. Like, after reading that, low key, I don't blame her. But in that moment, I was like, oh, how could she say that? Like, I'm trying to save the friendship. I can't. I had a good intention, but I didn't know how to translate that through my actions. But anyway, basically, I needed someone to understand me. I needed this person to not be upset with me and like me and understand where I was coming from. So I ended up over explaining myself. I ended up pushing boundaries. I ended up going out of my way to give myself the space that someone else wasn't giving me. And I would love to say that this is because I genuinely valued them as a friend, but I would be lying if I said that's the only reason why I went out of my way. I needed them to understand me. I needed them to not have a negative idea of me. And fast forward, last year I stopped being friends with one of my closest friends. It was a really hard decision to make, but nonetheless, I do think it was the right decision because it had become a one-sided friendship. This person was not really giving me the time of day either. They basically wanted me to be their friend and to like putting effort while they weren't doing the same thing, but they expected me to do it. So it took me a while to kind of like understand what was happening because I was basically filling in the blanks, but I eventually realized this is a one-sided friendship. So I decided I'm just gonna remove myself from the situation. Like, this is not how I want my friends to treat me. This is not how I want to feel in my friendships, basically. I decided I wasn't going to have a conversation, not because I didn't respect this person, but because this person had communicated to me that they just didn't want more conversations like that. They weren't going to validate or try to understand where I was coming from, really. So I was like, I don't see the point of having a conversation. In order for a conversation to work, both sides have to be willing and putting the same effort to understand the other person. So if that's just happening from one side, it's just going to be like really hard to communicate. Anyway, so I decided I won't have that conversation because either way, I don't want to fix whatever is broken. I don't think it's a matter of fixing what's broken. I think it's just a matter of walking away from something that is no longer serving each other. And I think for the first time in my whole life, or maybe not the first time, maybe I'm just being dramatic, but I think for one of the earliest times in my whole life, I didn't care to explain myself. I knew that this person was going to have questions. I knew that this person was going to jump to conclusions and just assume negative things about me based on how everything came to an end. I knew that this person was going to talk about me. I knew that this person was going to discuss my behavior with other people. Although the idea of that was a little bit anxiety inducing, I was like, I don't care to explain myself. I don't need to explain myself. I don't see what explaining myself will get me because I don't really want to fix whatever is broken. So I walked away. And it's just crazy to me how a year before that, I was sending letters, desperately trying to communicate my side because I felt like I needed to explain myself. And then a year later, I was like, it's okay, they can misunderstand me. It's just crazy to me because I have developed this mindset of I don't want to be understood by people who are not willing to understand me or people who are not capable of understanding me. Because if you are not capable of understanding me, if you're not capable of letting go of your need of winning the argument and just trying to understand where the other person comes from and how the other person feels, if you're not willing to do that, why would I bother to explain myself? Because then I would just be wasting my time. I just love that for me. I love that mindset for me. And that's why I feel so blessed for being able to like share this message because I definitely wasn't like this always. I want to help anybody and everybody who used to be like me, who's like maybe in the middle of like writing a letter to someone because they weren't giving the space to talk about how they felt. So talking a little bit about how I used to behave when I was at the peak of my anxiety. I genuinely believed that people needed to like me in order for me to be safe. Honestly, I would say that comes from like high school or middle school where when one of my friends would misunderstand me, we were just like very quick to stop being friends. And sometimes I'd be without like a friend group because everyone just like wasn't giving me a chance to explain myself. Or one person would get mad at me and then they would tell everyone to just kind of like stop talking to me. So then that's what they did. So basically, like they would have power over my social stance or what happens to me in a social context. And then I guess we could say something about my parents. So whenever my parents were like upset with me, they would like blame me and wouldn't really give me a chance to explain, and then I would just experience not the best side of my parents for like a period of time. So I do understand where that idea of people need to agree with me or people need to like me, people need to know where I'm coming from to make sure that I am safe. But I think more in like a middle school, high school context, or just like in general. I confused being okay with how I felt. So if I felt upset, if I felt anxious, if I felt frustrated, I associated that with not being okay. So then when someone has a misconception of me and I would start feeling anxious about it, that just kind of like reinforced my belief that I'm not okay if someone misunderstands me. I just want to clarify, you can be safe even if you're crying. Like, I can be in my room crying, but that doesn't mean that I will lose all of my friends. That doesn't mean that someone will come in and like harm me or something like that. That does not mean that I will lose my job or something. Like, that is just me experiencing an emotion. That is just me releasing energy through crying. You can be emotionally all over the place and still be safe. You're just not regulated, but you're safe. So I would feel like I was in danger if people didn't understand where I was coming from. I needed to be liked. I needed. And that is the first step of being okay with being misunderstood. It's realizing that you don't need to be understood. You truly don't. You don't need whichever person you're thinking about to know where you're coming from or know what you meant or know your intention. I just want to give like different examples of different areas in life. So, for example, my dad. I haven't spoken to my dad in like 4 or 5 years. I want to say that I'm misunderstood by my dad. I don't think he understands a lot of the things from my perspective. I'm not really upset about it. Like, I think I might have been upset about it from the start, but now I feel very free from not having that kind of energy in my life. removing him from my life was kind of like the first step of my healing journey, and now I'm thriving, I'm glowing, I'm gorgeous, I feel comfortable with myself, I love my body, I love just like almost everything about me. And even if there's something about me that I'm not like in love with, I always treat myself with compassion. Even having my own family member misunderstand me didn't really stop me from becoming who I am, and I love who I am. A friend, I feel like a friend who misunderstands you won't be your friend for long. Let's say I have a friend, they misunderstand me, we stop being friends. I don't really care. Like, I'm probably not gonna see that person that often. Especially as an adult, they won't be on my circle who I see on a daily basis. So it doesn't really matter if someone who I rarely see misunderstands me. And if it's someone who I do see regularly, that doesn't mean that I have to be in constant communication with them. It might be uncomfortable at first, but honestly, I have noticed that every time I stop being friends with someone, or I guess I stop dating them, I just kind of like never see them again. Sometimes I have to pray to God to like, please, I don't want to see them again. And it works. So I'm not really like stressed about that. You know, if you're my friend and you don't bother to understand me, and you, I guess, go out of your way to misunderstand me or just make it difficult for me to have a conversation with you and explain my side, it probably won't be the end of the world for me to like not see you regularly after that. And then at work, you know, if it's like a coworker or a supervisor and they misunderstand you, as long as they're being polite about it, that's okay, because you're not in there to be friends with everyone. You're in there to do a job. Like, I've dealt with that in a couple different jobs. I'm not really stressing about that. I think I did at the start, but then I was like, I'm just gonna see them a couple times a week at most. And even if I were to see like this person every single day where I'm at work, as long as they're not giving me like microaggressions, or as long as they're not harassing me, I can do that. You know, because as I said, I'm not there to be friends with everyone. I am there to do my job. So I will limit it to just work related, because we don't have to be friends to make it work. We just have to be polite. If someone is not being polite with you or treating you with like basic decency or respect, then you have a bigger problem than just being misunderstood. I don't need every single person I've met, every single person that's in my life, or every single person that just left my life to understand me for me to be safe, because I will thrive regardless. I will have friends regardless. I will have a job regardless. I will post content regardless. I will come back to myself regardless. And I just really wish that it was something that I had understood before, when I was like the past version of me, because there is so much relief to be found when you're done over explaining yourself. Because now, if someone's not giving me the space to explain myself, I'm not gonna be like, I need to explain myself. And I'm not gonna write like a 3-page letter explaining myself and feeling anxious once I sent it, just waiting for what they're going to say, and then just feeling devastated when they do answer because it's not gonna be a positive answer. Now I'm like, oh, they misunderstand me? Okay, bye. So I'm not wasting mental energy. I am not wasting my time writing a letter. I am not wasting anything, because now I'm just redirecting it to the people who do want to make it work. Am I saying to just like walk away every single time there's a misunderstanding? No. Miscommunication and misunderstandings are bound to happen. It just very much depends on how you handle them. So, for example, my best friend now, if there's a miscommunication, will spend the time required to both explain herself and understand me, will give me the space for me to explain myself, and will give me the time that I need to understand her. You see, for my best friend, I wouldn't mind writing a letter. But that's the thing. I wouldn't mind it because she is willing, and because she is willing, I don't have to do all of that effort. The only people, and I've said this before because I feel like I've talked about misunderstandings quite a bit on my podcast, the person that is actually worth you over explaining yourself for will never put you in a position where you have to over explain yourself. You will never have to over explain yourself with people who are worth over explaining yourself to. If there is someone who placed you in the position where you have to over explain yourself, that's not worth it. It shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. It makes it harder when the other person is not willing. And I think it's very easy to differentiate who is willing and who's not based on how they treat you, how much space they give you, how many follow-up questions they give you. Because like when I'm with my best friend and she's explaining something and I just don't understand, I will ask questions. I will be like, what do you mean by that? And she does the same thing. So how do we accept that we don't need to do all of that? You have to realize that you're safe. So I just had to remind myself multiple times and give myself evidence on I am safe regardless. I am safe even if this person doesn't like me anymore, or if this person is no longer in my life. So a great example would be that one friend who I sent a letter. I want to say that's like the worst case scenario when it comes to friendship. Having such like a nasty fight, being misunderstood, being disrespected, and just like going your separate ways, like no resolution whatsoever. That was worst case scenario. And I remember that specific day. I was journaling about that and I told myself, okay, the worst case scenario in a friendship just happened. I'm still safe, like I'm physically safe. I have not been harmed. I have other friends. And not only do I have other friends, but they are supporting me as I'm processing this friendship breakup. So I have friends and I have support. I still have a job. I am able to do other stuff. Like I can go on dates. I don't know, I can go to a concert. I can do different events. Like I can basically do whatever I want. That friendship breakup didn't really stop me from moving. Obviously, it was hard and it gave me a lot to process, but it didn't limit my life in any way. So that was me giving myself evidence on how I was safe, even when I was being misunderstood. So once I was able to kind of like give myself evidence on how I was safe, even though it was uncomfortable, it started clicking that I was safe. And I also relied a lot on God. And I think this goes first, if anything. I learned that my safety does not come from the people around me. It does not come from my coworker understanding where I come from. It does not come from my friend giving me the space to talk about how I feel about the friendship. No, my safety comes from God. God is taking care of me. And I am always safe, not because people are liking me and understanding me, but because God is with me. And just a combination of all of that, it just made me realize I am safe regardless, even if people understand me or don't. Now, what is the second aspect of being okay with being misunderstood? Sitting with the discomfort. It is uncomfortable. That's why people avoid it. As I said in the start, I used to mistake being upset with being unsafe. So when you are in the discomfort and you feel dysregulated and you feel anxious, you don't feel safe. So sitting with the discomfort of being misunderstood, sitting with the discomfort of knowing that there's someone out there who has the wrong idea of you. And not only do they have the wrong idea of you, they are sharing it with everybody. The discomfort of we will potentially stop being friends. It will potentially be uncomfortable at my job. It will be not the ideal scenario, but that's okay. Something very important when it comes to being okay with being misunderstood is knowing who you are. Because once you know who you are, it's not as uncomfortable when other people think of you in a negative way. At first, if you don't know who you are and people think of you in a negative way, it can be uncomfortable because you can start thinking, is the negative version they have of me the reality of who I am? That's uncomfortable, 100%. But then when you start building your self-concept and you have more of a solid idea of who you are and what your intention was and how you carry yourself, having someone dislike you or misunderstand you, it's uncomfortable more from like a dissonance perspective. Like your idea of yourself and other people's idea of you is not the same, and that's uncomfortable until you accept that it will happen, even if you don't want it to. In the same way that your perception of other people most likely does not align with what they think of themselves, it will happen to you. Just knowing who you are, that will help you be equipped to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood. Because you already know who you are, you don't have to second guess your intention. You don't have to second guess your behavior. You don't have to second guess your identity because you know who you are, regardless of what people think or what people say. Does that mean that you're right and they're wrong? No, honestly, I think in those kind of scenarios, everyone's right and everyone's wrong depending on who you ask, because everyone just has a different perception of reality. They have a different context that influence why they said what they said, why they did what they did. And I think the most mature thing to do in that case is just ask yourself, how does the other person perceive me, or how might they perceive me? I always do that. I always ask myself, how was I behaving that causes this person to be upset? And why would they be upset about it? And I don't do that to judge myself. I don't do that to believe them over myself, but I do it because I do think it's important to understand how other people perceive you. I may be saying something and I will stand behind what I say time and time again, but maybe the way that I said it wasn't nice, and that's why they're having a problem with me. So then when I take that into consideration, I can be like, okay, let me work on my tone, because it does matter how you speak to people. So let me work on my tone. Not because you want to make it easier for the other person. If the other person doesn't want to make it easy for you, like, it's your choice if you want to be the bigger person. But you don't do that because you want to make it easier for the people around you. You do that because it's the right thing. You do that because in the same way that other people have things to work on themselves, you also have things to work on yourself, and you're just doing it to improve yourself. You're doing it because You're just that kind of person who improves themselves. So for example, if you and I have a problem, you better believe that I will go through what I did and I will reflect on my behavior and I will be like, do I feel proud of how I behaved? Is there something that I can work on for next time? Because every single time I've had a fight, every single time I've had a disagreement, I learn from my mistakes. So if I recognize that I don't need people to understand me, and I have a solid idea of who I am, and I love who I am, I'm genuine to who I am and what I do, the only other thing I have to do is sit with the discomfort of being disliked. I personally find myself in the stage where I don't care to explain myself. I know who I am, but I do find it uncomfortable knowing that someone does not think that way of me. It's not uncomfortable enough for me to go out of my way to explain myself, but it's uncomfortable enough for me to not be happy about it. And that's okay. You know, honestly, just the fact that I'm not sending like long letters to explain myself, that just tells me that I've grown so much. And I think that's the hardest part. If you're able to stop yourself from sending letters, if you're able to lower your urgency of explaining yourself, if you are able to be okay with the idea of they will have the wrong impression of me, then sitting with the discomfort is nothing. I think that's sitting with the discomfort is the easiest out of all the steps that you have to do. You just have to tolerate the uncomfortable feeling. You just have to tolerate it enough until you accept it. And once you accept it, it's going to be easier for you to let it go. At the end of the day, that discomfort is most likely temporary and it will pass. You know, like I think about it, and the discomfort I felt with my dad, I no longer feel. The discomfort I felt with like friends misunderstanding me, I no longer feel it. Does that mean that I'm not gonna feel it next time someone misunderstands me? No. That just means that next time a friend misunderstands me and I'm not able to fix it through a conversation for X, Y, or Z reason, I will feel weird the first couple of weeks and then I'm just gonna like accept it and let it go. And the more you do it, the easier it is to just accept it. And I know that may not be the advice that you want to hear, knowing that you just have to sit with the discomfort, but it is what it is. It's just what you can do. It's not an easy fix, and that's okay. Because you're capable of sitting with the discomfort. You're capable of doing uncomfortable things. This is just one of them. If they care about you, if they care about the relationship they have with you, whether it's romantic, platonic, or whatever, they will give you the time and the space and the effort that's required to understand. Because someone who values you, someone who wants to be in your life will give you that. They will give you the space, they will give you the effort, because that's the only way where you guys can grow and get past that miscommunication. If you're with someone who is not willing to do that, don't be willing to explain yourself, because you're just gonna be wasting your time. I don't know, guys. As long as I understand where I come from, as long as God understands where I come from and he knows that I did not have a bad intention and he is showing me what I need to work on, that's all I need. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I will say this is low-key in continuation to last week's episode, where I basically talk about how to have those kind of conversations with whoever you want to have them with, where you explain yourself and understand the other person, and the other person explains themselves and understands you. If that doesn't work out, and you're with someone who misunderstands you or is not making the effort, this is the perfect continuation. I really appreciate you guys listening to my episode. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.